An up and down day for drivers at Las Vegas has everybody asking, how do we catch Kevin Harvick? How's it going, everybody? My name is Eric. Welcome to Out of the Groove. I feel like I'm closer to the camera than usual. Need to back up. I don't want to get right in your face or anything. Not this early in the season, at least. But today I just have a couple quick things to talk about. Let's talk a little bit about Las Vegas. Kevin Harvick is now 2 for 3 to start this season after winning Atlanta, the second race of the season. He's now won Las Vegas, meaning he's now 2 for 2 on mile and a half this year. He's already got 13 bonus points for the playoffs because he's got 2 wins and 3 stage wins. So Kevin Harvick is loaded. Harvick led, I think, 215 laps of the 267 lap race at Las Vegas Motor Speedway. Really, nobody was ever, much like Atlanta, nobody ever really had a chance at him. I think at one point midway through the race, his pit crew lost him a few spots, but he quickly made those back up, and it was just kind of it was really kind of useless obstruction. Now I know this is just the third race of the season, not a super important race, but a lot of people were using this race as kind of a teller as to who, at least at this point in the season, who the strongest teams were. Because Atlanta, while we saw Harvick and a lot of the Fords, like Keselowski and others, dominate that race, Atlanta's different enough, we didn't really take that as proof that Harvick was the team to beat. But we should have, because Harvick came out and at Las Vegas started second and led basically from the get-go and didn't give it up. And now Las Vegas is a more generic mile and a half track. It's more similar to like Chicagoland, or it's more similar in a lot of ways to Charlotte or Texas than Atlanta is. So the fact that Harvick was so good at Las Vegas probably says even more than the fact that he was so good at Atlanta. I'll talk more about Harvick a little bit later on in the episode. Let's talk about some of the other big name drivers, young and old, who had very interesting days. It was quite looking at the leaderboard at the end of the day, it was a jumble. Last week I talked about several drivers who pretty big names, some younger drivers, some veterans like Jimmie Johnson. I talked about how much stress or how nervous they were about their slow starts to the season. And Jimmie Johnson was the one I was probably the most nervous for at this point in the season, and he had about the biggest roller coaster of a weekend you can have. I mean, started out in practice, he didn't look terrible, he didn't qualify all that well. I mean, he was okay in practice and qualifying, not great, not what we're used to seeing from Jimmie Johnson, but he looked okay. Then they showed up for the race on Sunday, failed inspection, pre-race inspection 3 times, which resulted in the car chief being ejected from the race before it even started. So now Jimmie Johnson, not only was he without a car chief, he was struggling to get through inspection, but now he would have to start at the tail end of the field. So goodness me, the 48 team was just, it was a mess. And then when the race started, the car was terrible. I mean, Jimmie almost spun out like 3 times just on his own. He was a lap down early on, almost went 2 laps down, was running in the late 20s, and he was not a good day. Things were looking disastrous for the 48 team. But then they started to turn things around. After some yellows, getting the free pass and all that, he got back in the lead lap, ultimately finished 12th. And while 12th place for Jimmie Johnson at a mile and a half that he's won a whole bunch at in the past is not very good, given how bad they were at Atlanta last week and given how rough this weekend was for them until that point, a 12th place finish for Jimmie Johnson, I think he'll take it. At least this car doesn't have any scratches on it. Still not a great start to the season. In fact, still a pretty horrible start for the 48 team by their standards, but they are, hopefully the second half of the Vegas race here gives them some confidence moving forward. Now, similar to what we saw at Atlanta, the young drivers were really not very good at Las Vegas either. They were better in general, but I'm definitely starting to see a couple of alarming trends that I guess I wanted to talk about. Firstly, William Byron finished 27th in this race here at Las Vegas, and I get he's a rookie. He might be. Is he the youngest full-time driver in the field? He might be. How old is he, like 19? Is he even 20 years old? William Byron, I get that he's really young. He's driving a race car that has underperformed for years now with the 5 car. The 5 is now the 24. We've been over that. Hopefully everyone's caught up there. He was running 30th at different points in the race, finished 27th, just looked completely overmatched for the second week in a row. Now, at first glance, this shouldn't be that alarming. Like I said, he's driving not a great car. He's a very young driver. It makes sense that he would struggle off the bat a little bit. But given how quick he had success in the trucks, given how quickly he had success in the Xfinity Series, I guess I just kind of thought he would be running at least top 20 in his first few races, especially at a track like Las Vegas that's not particularly challenging. It's not uniquely challenging in the way Atlanta is or the way like a road course is. I just expected a little more. He showed flashes in practice, like he could put up fast laps, but hey, we've seen like with Danica Patrick, she was capable of putting fast laps together here and there. She just couldn't run a full race. So I hope this is a trend that only lasts a few weeks here, maybe a couple months, and hopefully William Byron and that team get something going and become a playoff contender towards the end of the season. That's what I'm hoping for. But man, things look things look ugly. Another kind of not so great trend, Darrell Wallace Jr. I talked last week, he had an outstanding Daytona 500 weekend, just about everything that could go right went right for him, and then Atlanta was a disaster, and Las Vegas, again, just not much better. And the reason I call this a trend is this is kind of what I expected from the 43 car coming into this season. I mean, I get that, Bubba Wallace ran up pretty well in the 43, the few races he did last season in it, but the 43 car has been terrible. It's not been a contending car since Richard Petty drove it, honestly. So for everyone to expect Darrell Wallace Jr. to come in this year and be a playoff driver off the bat was unrealistic. I think Daytona, I talked about this last week, I think it's luck. Daytona's a little bit of luck. There's skill involved. He drove a good race, but there's luck, and the car doesn't really matter. And since he had a bad car, it was hidden by the draft. So I think Bubba Wallace finishing outside the top 20 for the second week in a row, it's an alarming trend because I want Bubba Wallace to do really well, but I think it's a trend that we will likely continue, at least for this year. I think this year he's not going to be a playoff driver. Will he one day be a playoff driver? I think he has the potential, but honestly, it baffles me that Richard Petty Motorsports is incapable of making a good race car. I don't want to diss the king here, but you're the king. You clearly know something about racing. You should at least know the kind of people you need to hire. I mean, you look at Furniture Row Racing as a single car team with a great race car. You look at Penske's had 2 cars for years, and they've been great. You look at Richard Petty Motorsports, you have one car, and you can't even make it competitive. I mean, Wood Brothers with Paul Menard and Ryan Blaney have been competitive. And you're telling me that the 43 car, just a one-car team, funded by Richard Petty, can't even make one competitive car? It's not Bubba's fault. So while those young drivers did not run very well, Chase Elliott did run pretty well. In fact, he had a top 10 run going most of the day. Until, during stage 3, Kurt Busch on a restart just lost control of his car and wrecked Chase Elliott. Man, I felt for Chase Elliott fans there. It just seems like the guy can't catch a break, man. Both of them had top 10 runs going. They were probably going to both finish in the top 10, and given that Chase Elliott's been the best Hendrick car this season, it was looking like it was going to be an okay day for Hendrick, given that he was going to have a good finish. But as it is, Hendrick didn't have a great day. Kurt Busch trying to get that cup win at his home track, still hasn't come. We'll see if he gets it done later this season, but man, I felt bad for him too. It was just an unfortunate circumstance. Their car snapping loose at a bad spot on the track and just caught up Chase Elliott. It just, that's what happens. Now let's go back to the winners, the leaders of this race, the drivers who were the best, like Kevin Harvick, obviously, like Brad Keselowski was good, Kyle Busch was probably the best Toyota, Truex was decent, you had Larson was the only Chevy that really seemed like he knew what he was doing, Ryan Blaney also looked good. A lot of those drivers looked great, but one thing that you just heard me mention is a lot of Fords. And this has been talked about a whole bunch, but going into this season, we expected the Ford teams to kind of struggle. We expected Toyota, most people, I say most people, I shouldn't say everybody, but most people expected Toyota to start the season off great. We expected Ford to kind of be lagging, Chevy to kind of be lagging, but then as the season went along, Chevy to build up to ultimately be where Chevy and Toyota were the class of the fields, and maybe Ford was lagging behind. That's what everyone's kind of expected coming into the season, and we have completely seen the opposite at the start. Toyota looks not that great. They kind of look like how they did at the beginning of last season when they had a brand new car, brand new body, and they're kind of struggling to get the handle on that. I mean, this is the same body that they had last year for the most part, and they seem to not be as good as they were, so that's a little weird. Chevy, kind of as expected, is struggling a little bit with the new Camaros, but they're still, I'm holding out hope, and I believe that they will get better by the end of the season. But what we did not expect was Ford to be this good. I mean, Brad Keselowski spent all of last season complaining about how Fords were at a competitive disadvantage. Well, all right, Brad, I'd like to see what you complain about this time. Because there is no logical reason why Ford should be so good right now. I mean, the fact that they were good at Daytona, made sense. They've been good at Daytona for several years now. That was understandable. I wasn't surprised by that. But the fact that Kevin Harvick, Brad Keselowski, Ryan Blaney, Joey Logano are all looking like top 5 cars week in, week out, these first couple races at the intermediate tracks is just not shocking. I mentioned last week, maybe it has something to do with the fact that Ford just has more veteran drivers than Toyota and Chevy. I mean, Toyota, I've talked about now that Carl Edwards is gone, Matt Kenseth is gone, that's a couple veterans that are gone from those teams. Dale Earnhardt Jr. is gone from Hendrick. Those are all Jeff Gordon, those are all some established veteran drivers that have left Chevy and Toyota the last few years, whereas Ford, you look at Penske and you look at Stewart-Haas, mostly veterans, and then Ryan Blaney. But Ryan Blaney is maybe the best young driver we have right now. But ultimately, it baffles me why Ford is so good, how they're so good. I have to do more research on what, I know NASCAR updated their inspection system with the black tent thing that they have that seems to be working okay. Most people seem to be okay with it, but I'll have to know if that changed something, if that gave Ford an advantage. We'll see, but it's very surprising that Ford is as good as they are. I mean, Kevin Harvick has shown this type of brilliance before. It was 4 or 5 years ago, back in 2014, when he first came to Stewart-Haas Racing. He was really good that year, won the championship. But I didn't really see him run very many races that year that looked as good as these last 2 races have. I mean, as far as 2 races back-to-back, I have not seen this level of dominance, really, in a long time. And thank you to people last week who corrected me. That's right. I talked about how last week's Atlanta race was one of the most dominant races I've ever seen. I completely forgot that Martin Truex Jr. led almost every single lap of the Coke 600 2 years ago. So thanks for reminding me on that one. That's definitely the most dominant win I've ever seen. But Kevin Harvick, 2 races in a row, both looked practically unbeatable. We're going to Phoenix, which is a very different track, but Harvick's been the best at Phoenix for years, so goodness, could Harvick go 3 for 3? Go 3 in a row just like that? I'm gonna have to walk out the room. Now, before I go, I want to hit on a little rumor or a little tidbit of details that I've actually only read about today, and today I'm filming this on Monday, so I did not read about this after the race, but I'm finding out about it now. The NASCAR fan police on Reddit and all over the internet seem to make some observations after the race on Sunday. They pointed out, I'll put up a little screen grab of it right there. They point out the fact that it seemed like Kevin Harvick's rear window / roof had a little bit of a dent in it, or seemed to be giving, like it had a pressure. It was crushed in slightly. I'll blow it up for you right there, but you can see it. This was a shot that was seen at different points during the race on Sunday. It was not there at the beginning of the race, apparently, and it was not necessarily there during all of the caution laps or everything, but it was there especially midway / deep long into green flag runs. It would start to develop. And so the NASCAR Reddit fan police who caught Chase Elliott last year in the playoffs when Chase Elliott's team tried to put tape on the rear spoiler to help add a tiny bit of downforce, a large part of why that was penalized was because fans spotted it and pointed it out. So I don't want to sit here and say that this little rear window thing is going to be a huge deal for Harvick. I don't know how much it even helped his car, if anything, but it's interesting that was something that Chase Elliott, actually, his team pointed it out during the race. They talked about it on the radio and thought it was odd. The fact that there was no other cars, seemingly, that had this thing on their car, and the fact that Kevin Harvick was, like I said, just miles and miles ahead of everybody else in terms of just how fast they were. It'll be interesting to see if NASCAR takes a look at this, and I want to go back and look at Atlanta and see if a similar thing maybe was happening there. I'm not going to sit here and accuse Harvick of cheating. I mean, we've seen all sorts of little gamesmanship being played in NASCAR, from Chase Elliott last year to, Jimmie Johnson's had little things in years past. I'm not going to sit here and blame anyone. We've seen side skirts being pulled out in the playoffs in years past. Everyone's tried something, so I'm not going to fault Harvick and Rodney Childers too bad, but I hope NASCAR at least takes a look at this, because I don't think if it is against the rule book, because there's nothing explicitly in the rules that says it is, I don't think, but if there is something in there that they don't like, I hope they change it, or at least make sure it's an equal, even playing field, because as much as, I'm sure Harvick fans are loving this, Kevin Harvick dominating the start of the NASCAR season is not good for the sport. It's not the best, it's not what NASCAR wants. So I wonder if they'll take a look at it. I think they will. I don't think there'll be a penalty or anything this week, but I think it might be something they address, much like a few years ago when teams were pulling out side skirts that NASCAR didn't penalize anybody, but they addressed it and said, stop doing it or we will penalize you. That might be something they do in this case with Kevin Harvick. I just think it's interesting that the internet police are at it again. Pretty wild. But anyway, that is my show. I'll have more episodes coming out later this week, hopefully. I'm a little sick right now. That's why, I don't know, I feel like I'm not talking as well as usual, but maybe this is normal. Maybe I always don't make any sense. But I'm feeling a little sick right now. Hopefully I feel a little bit better later this week so I can do some other stuff, some other videos, some other episodes later this week. But thanks for watching, guys. Subscribe if you haven't already. Like, share, all that jazz, whatever YouTubers are supposed to say. Subscribe, haha, hit that like button, smash that, subscribe. I just sit here in my dorm, in my apartment, and shout at a camera about Kevin Harvick and the internet, so I don't know, I don't know how to do this. Anyway, thanks for watching, everybody. We'll be back later this week. I have a couple fun videos planned, more just broad NASCAR topic videos planned that I think will be kind of fun, so hopefully those work out this weekend. Hopefully I'm feeling a little bit better. Thanks for watching, everybody. I'll see you guys very soon. Have a good one.